She said I wasn't man enough. Those 5 words shattered everything I thought I knew about love, about myself, about the 3 years I'd wasted trying to be enough for someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenience. That night, standing in the rain outside the restaurant where Lily had just publicly humiliated me, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to beg anymore, I wasn't going to explain myself anymore, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let her words define who I was. But first, let me tell you how a man who gave everything to the woman he loved became the man she claimed didn't exist. How the weak Robert she mocked became the man she'd desperately want back, except by then, it would be too late. The rain soaked through my jacket as I pulled out my phone, staring at her contact. Lily, it still read, complete with the heart emoji I'd added when we first started dating. How pathetic that looked now. My thumb hovered over the delete button. 3 years. 3 years of being her emotional support, her financial backup, her convenient boyfriend who she could dismiss whenever someone more exciting walked into the room. 3 years of hearing about how Alan from her office was so confident and such a real man. 3 years of being told I was too soft, too nice, too safe. Well, she was about to find out just how wrong she was about me. I deleted her number, blocked her on everything, and walked away from the restaurant where she was probably still laughing with Alan about her pathetic boyfriend who couldn't even stand up for himself. Little did she know, she'd just created the man who would make her realize exactly what she'd thrown away. And by the time she figured it out, I'd be long gone, with someone who actually deserved me. My name is Robert, and for 26 years, I thought being kind meant being weak. I thought putting someone else's needs first was what love looked like. I thought that if I just tried hard enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, I could earn the love and respect I desperately craved. I was wrong about everything. Lily Martinez walked into my life 3 years ago like a hurricane in designer heels. She was everything I thought I wanted, beautiful, ambitious, confident to the point of arrogance. She worked in marketing at a prestigious firm downtown, drove a BMW her daddy bought her, and had this way of making you feel like you'd won the lottery just by getting her attention. I was working as a junior accountant then, pulling decent money, but nothing spectacular. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a reliable but unremarkable Honda, and spent my weekends reading, hitting the local gym occasionally, or hanging out with my small circle of friends. I was, by all accounts, a perfectly average guy living a perfectly average life. That should have been enough. Hell, that should have been more than enough for someone who claimed to love me. But for Lily, I was never enough. Not my job. Accounting is so boring, Robert. Don't you want to do something more exciting? Not my car. It's so embarrassing when you pick me up in that thing. Not my apartment. Why can't you get a place downtown like a real adult? Not even my personality. You need to be more assertive, more confident. Look at Alan from my office. Now that's what a confident man looks like. Alan, God, how I came to hate that name. Alan was everything I wasn't, at least in Lily's eyes. He was the senior marketing director, 6'2" with perfectly styled hair and a gym membership he apparently actually used. He drove a Porsche, lived in a penthouse, and had the kind of swagger that made women turn their heads and men step aside, and Lily never let me forget it. Alan took the whole team out for drinks yesterday to that new rooftop bar downtown. He's such a natural leader. Alan just bought this amazing watch, a Rolex. It's so sophisticated. Alan was telling us about his weekend in the Hamptons. He has such interesting stories. Every conversation somehow circled back to Alan. Every comparison somehow made me look smaller, weaker, less significant. And like an idiot, I kept trying harder, kept pushing myself to be more like this perfect man who apparently embodied everything I lacked. I started working out more seriously, spending money I didn't really have on nicer clothes, even looked into getting a better car. I thought if I could just become more like Alan, maybe Lily would look at me the way she looked at him when she talked about him. But it was never enough. The more I tried to change, the more she seemed to pull away. The more I gave, the less she seemed to appreciate it. I was trapped in this cycle of constantly trying to prove my worth to someone who had already decided I wasn't worth the effort. Our relationship became this twisted dynamic where I was always the one apologizing, always the one making concessions, always the one grateful that she was still with me despite my obvious shortcomings. She'd cancel our dates to hang out with her work friends, including Alan, of course. She'd criticize everything from my choice of restaurants to my conversation topics to the way I dressed. And I took it all because I thought that's what love meant. I thought if you really loved someone, you accepted their feedback and worked to become better for them. I thought her criticism came from a place of wanting to help me improve. I was such a fool. The worst part wasn't even the constant put-downs or the obvious way she compared me to other men. The worst part was how she'd throw me a bone just when I was about to break, a sweet text, a surprise kiss, a night where she actually seemed happy to be with me. Just enough to keep me hooked, just enough to make me think that maybe, if I tried harder, if I became more of what she wanted, we could get back to how things were in the beginning. But there was no beginning. Looking back now, I realize she was never really happy with me. I was just convenient. Safe. A placeholder until something better came along. And Alan was definitely something better in her eyes. The end came on a Tuesday night in October, at Marcello's, the Italian restaurant where we'd had our first official date 3 years earlier. I'd made reservations thinking it would be romantic, nostalgic even. I'd been planning to finally address the issues in our relationship, to have an honest conversation about where we stood and what we both wanted. I should have known better. Lily showed up 20 minutes late, which had become standard for her whenever we had plans. She slid into the booth across from me without apology, immediately pulling out her phone to check messages. "Sorry, work's been crazy," she said without looking up. "Alan's been pushing this new campaign and we're all staying late to get it perfect." "Alan, of course. Maybe we could just focus on us tonight," I suggested gently. "I feel like we haven't really talked in weeks." She finally looked up from her phone, and I could see the irritation in her eyes immediately. "Here we go," she muttered. "Robert, I told you I had a stressful day. Can't you just be supportive instead of needy?" Needy. There was that word again. Every time I tried to have a serious conversation about our relationship, every time I expressed any kind of need or concern, I was being needy. "I'm not being needy," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I just think we should talk about..." "About what?" she interrupted. "About how you're feeling insecure again? About how you don't like that I have male friends? About how you want me to baby you and tell you everything's perfect when it's not?" The last part hit like a slap. "When it's not perfect? What does that mean?" Lily set down her phone and leaned back in the booth, studying me with this look I'd never seen before, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time and didn't like what she saw. "It means, Robert, that I'm tired of pretending this is working when it's not. I'm tired of dating a man who acts like a boy. I'm tired of having to make all the decisions, having to push you to do anything interesting, having to apologize for you when you can't hold your own in conversations with my friends." Each word was like a knife twisting deeper, but I was still trying to fix it, still trying to understand what I'd done wrong. "If you tell me what's bothering you, I can work on it," I said. "I can change." "That's exactly the problem," she snapped, loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to look. "You're always trying to change for me instead of just being a man. You're always asking permission, always seeking approval, always looking for validation. Do you know how exhausting that is?" I felt my face burning as I realized other people were definitely listening now. The couple at the table next to us had stopped their own conversation entirely. "Lily, can we please keep our voices down? See, even now. Even when I'm telling you exactly what's wrong, you're more worried about what strangers think than about standing up for yourself. You're worried about keeping the peace instead of fighting for what you want." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper that somehow felt worse than the shouting. "You want to know the truth, Robert? You want to know why this isn't working? It's because you're not man enough for me. You never have been. A real man doesn't beg for scraps of affection. A real man doesn't apologize for existing. A real man doesn't spend 3 years trying to mold himself into what he thinks I want, instead of just being confident in who he is." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt dizzy, like the air had been sucked out of the restaurant. Not man enough. The phrase echoed in my head, drowning out everything else. "Alan would never act the way you're acting right now," she continued, and there it was, the final twist of the knife. "Alan knows who he is. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He doesn't apologize for having opinions or taking up space. He's confident, decisive, strong. He's everything you keep trying to be but never actually become." I sat there in stunned silence, watching the woman I'd loved for 3 years systematically destroy everything I thought I knew about myself, about us, about what I had to offer the world. "So what are you saying?" I finally managed to ask. "I'm saying we're done," she said simply. "I'm saying I can't waste any more time waiting for you to become the man I need you to be. I'm saying I deserve better than someone who makes me feel like I'm dating a project instead of a partner." She stood up, gathered her purse, and looked down at me one last time. "Maybe someday you'll figure out how to be the kind of man a woman actually wants to be with, but I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for that day." And then she was gone, leaving me sitting alone in a restaurant full of people who had just witnessed my complete and utter humiliation. The waiter approached carefully, probably wondering if I was going to break down completely. I paid the check, walked outside into the rain, and stood there on the sidewalk as 3 years of my life officially came to an end. But something else began that night too, something that would change everything. The first month after Lily left was the darkest period of my life. I won't sugarcoat it, I was a mess. I called in sick to work more days than I care to admit, spent entire weekends in bed watching Netflix and ordering takeout, and generally wallowed in a level of self-pity that would have disgusted me if I'd been watching someone else do it. But here's the thing about rock bottom, it gives you a solid foundation to build from. Somewhere around week 6, I was lying on my couch in day-old clothes, scrolling through Lily's Instagram for the 100th time that day. She'd already posted 3 photos from various work events, all featuring her laughing with colleagues, all featuring Alan prominently in the background or sometimes right next to her, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. I was torturing myself, basically, looking for evidence that she was happier without me, confirmation that everything she'd said about me was true, and I found it. Boy, did I find it. There was Alan, confident and smiling in every photo. There was Lily, glowing in a way she'd never glowed around me in the final months of our relationship. They looked like they belonged together in a way that I'd been too blind to see before. And that's when something shifted. I was looking at these photos, feeling sorry for myself, when I caught sight of my reflection in my phone screen. Stubble from not shaving in 3 days. Hair that hadn't seen a comb in longer than that. Wearing the same t-shirt I'd been wearing since Thursday. Lily was right, not about me not deserving love or respect, that was her own cruelty talking, but about the man I'd become in that relationship. I had become weak. I had become someone who apologized for existing. I had become someone who waited for permission to live his own life. But I wasn't born that way. I'd allowed myself to become that way. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a long, hard look at myself in the bathroom mirror and asked the question I'd been avoiding. Who do you want to be? Not who did Lily want me to be, not who would make me acceptable to women like her. Who did I, Robert, want to be when I looked in the mirror every morning? The answer came immediately. I wanted to be strong, I wanted to be confident, I wanted to be the kind of man who didn't need anyone's permission to take up space in the world. I wanted to be someone I could respect, regardless of who else respected me. So I started there. The next morning, I got up at 6 a.m. for the first time in months. I showered, shaved, put on clothes that actually fit properly, and went to the gym. Not the casual, half-hearted workouts I'd been doing sporadically for years, but a real workout. I hired a trainer named Marcus, a former Marine who took one look at me and basically said, "We've got work to do." Marcus didn't care about my sob story. He didn't want to hear about Lily or Alan or my bruised ego. He cared about one thing, making me stronger than I was yesterday. And for the first time in my adult life, I had a goal that had nothing to do with anyone else's approval. I started going to the gym 6 days a week. I changed my diet, cutting out the junk food and alcohol I'd been using to numb the pain. I started reading books about confidence, about leadership, about what it actually meant to be a strong man in the modern world. And something amazing happened. The stronger I got physically, the stronger I got mentally. The more disciplined I became with my workouts, the more disciplined I became in every area of my life. I started arriving at work earlier, volunteering for challenging projects, speaking up in meetings instead of sitting silently in the corner. After 3 months, people started noticing. My boss mentioned that I seemed more focused. My coworkers started asking me for advice on projects. I got a promotion I'd been hoping for but never actively pursued. After 6 months, I was a different person entirely. I'd gained 20 pounds of muscle, lost 15 pounds of fat, and completely revamped my wardrobe. I moved to a better apartment downtown, not to impress anyone else, but because I wanted to wake up somewhere that reflected the man I was becoming. But the most important change was internal. I stopped apologizing for having opinions. I stopped asking permission to make decisions about my own life. I stopped trying to make everyone else comfortable at the expense of my own comfort. I became someone I genuinely liked spending time with. And here's what nobody tells you about real transformation. It's not about becoming someone completely different. It's about becoming who you actually were underneath all the layers of other people's expectations and criticisms. I wasn't becoming a new Robert, I was finally becoming the Robert I was meant to be all along. The Robert who had confidence in his own worth, the Robert who didn't need external validation to know he was valuable. The Robert who could walk into any room and belong there simply because he belonged in his own skin. 7 months after that night at Marcello's, I ran into an old friend from college at a coffee shop downtown. He literally didn't recognize me at first. "Robert, Jesus man, what happened to you? You low-hide." "Okay, incredible." I smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt completely genuine. I figured out who I actually am. But the real test was still coming. Because all the confidence in the world doesn't mean much until someone tries to shake it. And someone was about to try. Her name was Jennifer, and she changed everything I thought I knew about how relationships were supposed to work. I met her at a book signing downtown, something the old Robert never would have attended alone, but the new Robert didn't need anyone's company to do things he found interesting. The author was discussing leadership principles, and I'd been reading everything I could get my hands on about personal development. Jennifer was sitting 2 seats down from me, taking notes in a leather journal, completely absorbed in the discussion. She had this quiet confidence about her that immediately caught my attention, not the loud, demanding presence that Lily had, but something steadier, more grounded. When the QA session opened up, she raised her hand and asked the most insightful question of the evening. As she spoke, I found myself genuinely impressed by her intelligence, her thoughtfulness, the way she articulated complex ideas without needing to dominate the conversation. After the event, I did something the old Robert never would have done. I approached her. "That was a brilliant question about sustainable motivation," I said as we were filing out of the venue. "I've been struggling with that exact concept." She smiled, and it was warm and genuine. "Thank you, I'm Jennifer, by the way." "Robert, would you like to grab coffee sometime and continue the conversation?" No games, no elaborate strategy, no agonizing over whether I was being too forward or not forward enough. Just a straightforward request from a man who knew what he wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for it. "I'd like that," she said, and gave me her number without hesitation. Our first coffee date turned into a 3-hour conversation that ranged from books to travel to career goals to family stories. Jennifer listened when I spoke and responded thoughtfully. She shared her own experiences without trying to one-up mine. She laughed at my jokes not because she felt obligated to, but because she genuinely found them funny. Most importantly, she treated me like an equal, not someone she needed to fix or improve or mold into her ideal partner, just a man whose company she enjoyed and whose opinions she valued. The contrast with Lily was stark, but I tried not to make comparisons. This wasn't about proving something to my ex or getting revenge. This was about moving forward with someone who saw value in who I actually was. On our 3rd date, Jennifer said something that completely floored me. "I love how confident you are without being arrogant," she said as we walked through the park after dinner. "It's so attractive when a man knows his own worth but doesn't feel the need to constantly prove it to everyone else." Confident, she saw me as confident. The man Lily had called weak and indecisive, Jennifer saw as self-assured and stable. "You know," I said, testing the waters, "I wasn't always this way. I used to be different." "We all used to be different," she replied. "That's what growth is about. I'm more interested in who you are now than who you used to be." Who I was now, not who I could become if I changed everything about myself, but who I was in that moment. It was such a foreign concept that I almost didn't know how to process it. Over the next few weeks, Jennifer and I fell into an easy rhythm. We went to museums, tried new restaurants, took weekend trips to nearby cities. She had her own career as a graphic designer, her own friends, her own interests and hobbies. She didn't need me to complete her, she wanted me to complement her. And the sex, God, the difference was night and day. With Lily, I'd always felt like I was auditioning, like I needed to perform perfectly or risk criticism. With Jennifer, intimacy felt natural, mutual, joyful. She made me feel desired in a way I'd never experienced before. But I was still carrying baggage from my previous relationship. Sometimes I'd catch myself over-analyzing Jennifer's words, looking for hidden criticism or signs that she was losing interest. Sometimes I'd apologize unnecessarily or ask for reassurance about things that didn't require reassurance. Jennifer noticed, of course, she was too perceptive not to. "Robert," she said one evening as we were cooking dinner together in her apartment, "can I ask you something?" My stomach clenched immediately. Here it comes, I thought. Here's where she tells me what's wrong with me, what I need to fix, how I'm not measuring up. "Of course," I said, bracing myself. "Who hurt you?" The question was so unexpected, so gentle, that I actually felt tears spring to my eyes. "I mean," she continued, stirring the pasta sauce, "you're an amazing guy. You're kind, intelligent, funny, successful, handsome, but sometimes you act like you're waiting for me to realize you're not good enough and leave. Someone did a number on you, didn't they?" And right there, in her kitchen, with the smell of garlic and herbs filling the air, I told her everything. About Lily, about the constant criticism, about the night at Marcello's, about spending 3 years trying to be enough for someone who had already decided I never would be. Jennifer listened without interrupting, and when I was finished, she turned off the stove and faced me completely. "Her loss," she said simply, "but more importantly, you survived it. You didn't just survive, you thrived, you became the man you were meant to be, and now you're here, with someone who sees exactly how incredible you are." That night, I knew I was falling in love, not the desperate, needy love I'd felt for Lily, but something deeper, healthier, more sustainable. But fate wasn't done testing me yet. 10 months after that devastating night at Marcello's, I was a completely different man, living a completely different life. The transformation was so complete that sometimes I felt like my old self had been a character I'd played rather than who I actually was. I'd been promoted twice at work and was now heading up my own team. I'd moved into a sleek downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. My body had been completely transformed. I was stronger and more confident than I'd ever been in my life. Most importantly, I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way I'd never experienced during my 3 years with Lily. Jennifer and I had been together for 4 months, and it was everything a healthy relationship should be. We supported each other's goals, enjoyed each other's company, and brought out the best in each other without trying to change the fundamental core of who we were. I should have known it wouldn't last without interference. I was leaving the gym after an evening workout when I saw her. Lily was standing next to a BMW in the parking lot, not the one her father had bought her, but a newer, more expensive model. She was dressed impeccably as always, but there was something different about her posture, something less certain than I remembered. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could see her taking in the changes, the broader shoulders, the confident way I carried myself, the expensive workout gear, the fact that I was walking toward a silver BMW myself, a car I'd bought with my promotion money. "Robert," she said, and her voice had a quality I'd never heard before, uncertainty, maybe even awe. "Lily," I replied neutrally, not stopping my walk toward my car. "Wait," she called, hurrying to catch up with me. "Can we talk?" I turned to face her fully, and I saw something in her eyes that would have meant everything to me 10 months ago. She was looking at me the way she used to look at Alan, with genuine attraction, with interest, with something approaching respect. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "You look," she started, then seemed to struggle with the words. "You look incredible. What happened to you?" "I became the man I was supposed to be," I said simply. She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume, the same expensive scent I used to love. "Robert, I've been thinking about us a lot lately, about what I said that night. I think I was too harsh. Too harsh, as if systematically destroying my self-worth in a public restaurant was just a matter of poor word choice." "I think you were honest," I replied, "and I'm grateful for that honesty. It helped me realize some things about myself." "But that's just it," she said, reaching out to touch my arm. I didn't pull away, but I didn't respond to the touch either. "I was wrong about you. I can see that now. You've become everything I said you weren't. You're confident, successful, strong. You're the man I always knew you could be." The man she always knew I could be. Even now, even as she was trying to win me back, she couldn't acknowledge that this strength had always been there. She'd just been too focused on tearing me down to see it. "I'm glad you think so," I said. "Robert." She stepped even closer, her voice dropping to the intimate tone she used to use when she wanted something. "I made a mistake. I let my frustration get the better of me, and I said things I didn't mean. But we were good together, weren't we? We had something special." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Hope your workout went well. Making dinner, your favorite pasta. Love you." I smiled reading it, a genuine, warm smile that I couldn't have faked if I'd tried. "We? Oh's that?" Lily asked, and there was something sharp in her voice now. "My girlfriend," I said simply. The word hit her like a physical blow. I could see her processing it, could see the disbelief and hurt and anger cycling through her expression. "Your girlfriend," she repeated. "Already? It's been 10 months, Lily." "But..." She seemed to struggle with the concept that I might have moved on, might have found someone else, might not be sitting around waiting for her to change her mind. "Who is she?" "Someone who appreciates me," I said, and started walking toward my car again. "Robert, wait." She grabbed my arm more insistently this time. We can't just throw away 3 years. What we had was real." I stopped and turned to face her one more time. What we had was me giving everything and you taking it for granted. What we had was me constantly apologizing for existing while you made it clear I wasn't enough. What we had was toxic, Lily, and I'm grateful it's over. "But I've changed too," she said desperately. "I've realized what I lost. I know how I treated you wasn't fair, and I want to make it right. I want to try again." "Why?" I asked. "What's different now?" "You're different now. You're the man I always wanted you to be." And there it was, the fundamental problem that would always exist between us. Even now, even as she was trying to win me back, she saw me as a project, as someone who had finally become acceptable to her, rather than someone who had always been worthy of love and respect. "I was always that man, Lily," I said quietly. "You just couldn't see it because you were too busy trying to make me into someone else, and because I was foolish enough to let you." "Please," she said, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. "Just give me a chance to show you how different things could be. We could be amazing together now." For a split second, I felt something, not love, not desire, but maybe an echo of what I used to feel for her, sympathy, perhaps, or maybe just sadness for the time we'd both wasted. "I'm with someone who already thinks I'm amazing," I said. "Someone who thought so from the moment she met me, not after I proved myself worthy. Someone who loves me for who I am, not who I might become." "Robert, goodbye, Lily." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see her just standing there, probably for the first time in her life, truly understanding what she'd lost. But I felt nothing but relief. When I got to Jennifer's apartment, she took one look at my face and knew something had happened. "Bad day?" she asked, wrapping her arms around me. "Actually," I said, holding her close and breathing in the scent of her shampoo. "It was a perfect day. I just realized how far I've come." But Lily wasn't done. She started showing up places she knew I'd be. The coffee shop near my office, the bookstore where Jennifer and I liked to browse on weekends. Even the gym, though she'd never worked out a day in her life when we were together. Each time, she'd try a different approach. Sometimes desperate and pleading, sometimes angry and accusatory, sometimes trying to use our shared history to manipulate me into giving her another chance. "You used to love me," she said, during one particularly pathetic encounter at my office building. "That doesn't just disappear." "You're right," I told her. "I did love you, past tense, and no, it didn't just disappear. You systematically destroyed it over 3 years until there was nothing left." The final confrontation came at a work party I was attending with Jennifer. It was a networking event for young professionals, and I should have known Lily would be there. It was exactly the kind of scene she thrived in. She approached us while Jennifer was at the bar getting drinks. "So this is her," she said, looking Jennifer up and down dismissively. "She's pretty, I'll give you that. Very safe." "Lily, don't." "What? I'm just making conversation. Does she know about us, about how we were together for 3 years, about how you used to tell me I was the love of your life?" Jennifer returned with our drinks at that moment, taking in the situation immediately. "You must be Lily," she said pleasantly, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer. Robert's told me so much about you." Lily shook her hand, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. All good things, I hope, she said with false sweetness. He told me you taught him exactly what he doesn't want in a relationship, Jennifer replied with a smile that was all warmth and no malice. So yes, all very educational. The comment hit its mark perfectly. Lily's composure cracked just enough for her true feelings to show through. You think you know him, she said to Jennifer, but you don't. You don't know what he's really like when the honeymoon phase is over. You don't know how needy he gets, how clingy and insecure. You don't know. I know he's the kindest, strongest, most genuine man I've ever met, Jennifer interrupted calmly. I know he makes me laugh every day and supports my dreams and treats me like an equal partner. I know he's nothing like the man you're describing, which tells me everything I need to know about who was really the problem in your relationship. Lily's face flushed red. She turned to me, her mask completely off now. You think you're so much better now, don't you? You think you've won something? But I know the real you, Robert. I know you're still that same weak, pathetic man who— Enough, I said, and my voice carried an authority that made her stop mid-sentence. You're embarrassing yourself, Lily, and you're disrespecting my girlfriend. I think you should leave. Robert. No, I said firmly. This is over. We're over. We've been over for almost a year, and nothing you say or do is going to change that. I'm happy. I'm with someone who actually loves and respects me, and you need to accept that and move on. For a moment, I thought she might continue the scene, might make an even bigger spectacle of herself. But something in my tone, in my posture, in the absolute certainty of my words must have finally gotten through to her. She looked at me one last time, and I saw the exact moment she finally understood that she had lost me completely and irrevocably. You'll regret this, she said quietly, but there was no conviction in it anymore. The only thing I regret, I replied, is not doing it sooner. She left without another word. Jennifer slipped her hand into mine and squeezed gently. Are you okay? She asked. I looked around the room full of successful, confident people. I looked at the beautiful, intelligent woman beside me who loved me exactly as I was. I thought about my career, my apartment, my body, my life, all of it built by me, for me, on my own terms. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it completely. 2 years later. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, addressed in elegant script to Mr. Robert Chen and guest. Inside, gold-embossed letters announced the engagement party of Lily Martinez and Alan Hoffman. I stared at it for a moment, then started laughing. Not bitter laughter, genuine amusement at the perfect irony of it all. She'd finally gotten what she thought she wanted, the confident, successful man who drove the Porsche and lived in the penthouse, the man she'd held up as everything I wasn't. I hope she'd learn to appreciate what she had this time. What's so funny? Jennifer asked, padding into the kitchen in one of my dress shirts, her hair still messy from sleep. Even after 18 months together, the sight of her in the morning still made my heart skip. I handed her the invitation. She read it, raised an eyebrow, and handed it back. Are you going to go? She asked, starting the coffee maker. Absolutely not, I said, tossing the invitation in the trash. That chapter of my life is closed. And it was, completely, totally closed. The man who had begged for Lily's approval, who had twisted himself into knots trying to become what she wanted, who had absorbed every criticism and insult as gospel truth, that man was gone. He'd been replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew his own worth, someone who didn't need anyone else's validation to feel complete. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, moments when the old insecurities crept back in, moments when I'd wondered if Jennifer would eventually see the same flaws in me that Lily had seen. But Jennifer wasn't Lily. Jennifer saw my kindness as strength, not weakness. She saw my thoughtfulness as consideration, not neediness. She saw my desire to make her happy as love, not desperation. More importantly, I'd learned to see those things in myself too. My career had exploded in ways I never could have imagined. The confidence I'd built in the gym and in therapy had translated into professional success. I'd been promoted to senior director, was making 3 times what I'd been making when Lily and I broke up, and had been headhunted by 2 major firms in the past 6 months. But the career success, the money, the recognition, none of that was what made me happy. What made me happy was coming home to someone who was genuinely excited to see me. What made me happy was building a life with someone who saw me as a partner, not a project. Jennifer and I had moved in together 6 months earlier, into a beautiful townhouse that we'd chosen together, decorated together, made into a home together. We had dinner parties with friends who liked us both, took vacations to places we both wanted to see, made decisions together like the equals we were. I'd even started talking to my mother again, something I'd avoided during the Lily years, because she'd always seen right through my ex's facade and I hadn't wanted to hear it. Now Mom adored Jennifer, and the feeling was mutual. "Your mother called while you were in the shower," Jennifer said, handing me a cup of coffee prepared exactly the way I liked it. "She wants to know if we're coming to dinner Sunday." "Do you want to go?" I asked. "I love your mom, of course I want to go." No negotiations, no guilt trips, no trying to get out of it or making me feel bad for wanting to maintain a relationship with my family. Just simple, straightforward honesty. God, I loved this woman. "There's something I want to talk to you about," I said, and she looked up from her coffee with interest, not anxiety. That difference still amazed me. With Lily, serious conversations had always been fraught with tension and the possibility of conflict. Why? The Jennifer, they were just part of how we communicated. "What's up?" I pulled out the small velvet box I'd been carrying around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Jennifer's eyes widened and her hand flew to her mouth. "Jennifer," I said, dropping to one knee right there in our kitchen, "you saved me, not from Lily, I saved myself from that situation, but you saved me from believing that what we had was what love was supposed to look like. You showed me what it meant to be loved for who I actually am, not who someone wants me to become." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she was smiling. "You make me want to be better, not because you've told me I'm not good enough, but because you make me feel like I'm already amazing and I want to be worthy of that faith. You've never tried to change me, never made me feel small, never made me question my worth. You just loved me, consistently and completely, from day one." I opened the box, revealing the ring I'd spent 3 months selecting, not the biggest or most expensive, but the one that perfectly captured her style, her elegance, her unique beauty. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said before I'd even finished the question. "Yes, of course, yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger and stood up to kiss her, and in that moment, I understood something I'd never understood before. This was what love was supposed to feel like: easy, natural, joyful. Not a constant battle or test or negotiation, but a partnership between two people who brought out the best in each other. The wedding was 8 months later, in a garden ceremony surrounded by people who genuinely cared about both of us. My mother cried happy tears. Jennifer's parents welcomed me into their family like I'd always belonged there. My friends from work, from the gym, from various aspects of my life all mingled easily with Jennifer's friends and family. It was everything a wedding should be, a celebration of love, commitment, and the future we were building together. As I was getting ready for the ceremony, my best man Marcus, the trainer who'd helped me transform my body and, indirectly, my life, handed me a note. "This came for you this morning," he said. It was from Lily. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Robert," it read, "I saw the wedding announcement in the paper. You look happy. I hope you are. I want you to know that I've spent the past 2 years in therapy, working on understanding why I treated you the way I did. My therapist helped me realize that I was so insecure about my own worth that I tore down the people closest to me to make myself feel better. You deserved so much better than that. You deserve to be loved and supported and celebrated, not criticized and diminished. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that, and I'm sorry I had to lose you to learn it. I hope your wife knows how lucky she is." I read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. Not because I wanted to keep it forever, but because it represented something important: closure, understanding, the final piece of healing from that chapter of my life. When I walked down the aisle and saw Jennifer waiting for me in her wedding dress, radiant and happy and so beautiful it took my breath away, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. The pain, the growth, the hard work of becoming someone I could respect. But mostly, I thought about how grateful I was that Lily had been wrong about me. I was man enough, I'd always been man enough, I just needed to find someone who could see it. As Jennifer and I exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever life brought our way, I realized that Lily had actually done me the greatest favor of my life. She'd forced me to become the man I was meant to be, but she'd also lost the chance to be with him, and that, I thought as I kissed my wife for the first time, was the sweetest victory of all.